Does the American foreign policy blob hate Russia for being a Christian nation? Well, that's what Tucker Carlson thinks, and he suggested as much in a recent speech. Let's watch that.
They hate Hungary. And they hate it not because of what it's done, but because of what it is. It's a Christian country, and they hate that. And that's the truth. And nobody wants to say it, but it's true. And it's not a particularly provocative Christian country. I don't think most Hungarians go to church. It's not a theocracy. You're not required to believe in the catechism to live here. It's nothing like that. It's a soft Christian country, the softest ever. 300 years ago, people would look at modern Hungary and say, that's not a Christian country. But by modern standards, it's one of the last countries that identifies as a nation built on Christian precepts. Again, not imposing them on anyone else. But that is enough to incite our policymakers in the United States. And that is exactly why they hate Russia, by the way. I'm not a fan of Russia. And if I was, I wouldn't admit it to a Hungarian audience.
Meanwhile, Utah Senator Mitt Romney seems to be okay with the war in Ukraine going on indefinitely because, quote, we're not losing any lives.
The single most important thing we can do to strengthen ourselves relative to China is to see Russia defeated in Ukraine, because they're allies, and Russia being weakened weakens their ally China. I mean, so and by the way, being able to take an amount which equals what, about 5% of our military budget, but actually less than 5% of our military budget each year to help the Ukrainians is about the best national defense spending I think we've ever done. We're losing no lives in Ukraine. And the Ukrainians are fighting heroically against Russia that has 1,500 nuclear weapons aimed at us. It's like, so we're diminishing and devastating the Russian military for a very small amount of money relative to what we spend in the rest of defense. It is very much in America's national interest, in our national interest, to help Ukraine. And the best thing we can do for America is to see people who have nuclear weapons aimed at us getting weaker.
All right, let's start with Romney and then circle back to Hungary. It does not fill me with that much relief to know that we're spending so much money elsewhere that Ukraine is a drop in the bucket by comparison.
Right.
I think, look, I don't have a lot of people on the right really despise Mitt Romney by this point. I can't work up much general anger or animosity toward him.
They hate him because he's Christian.
They hate him because he's Mormon. But look, his foreign policy views, and in particular his Ukraine views, I'm sorry, I think are both I mean, I don't even really have to make this case, because that is all. Most Republicans, the overwhelming majority, 70% of the Republican base agrees not with the neoconservative Ukrainian foreign policy views of most of the candidates, but with Mitt Romney, but with people who are arguing that we have given Ukraine enough support. This is not helping. It's not helping to prolong the war. Yes, it's good that no Americans are dying, but Ukrainians are dying. Maybe they would still be dying if Russia is invading. I understand that. I'm not naive about that. But can we structure an actual resolution that it maybe involves a cessation of Ukrainian territory to bring an end to this war? Something that is going to happen eventually anyway. So is it going to happen today, or is it going to happen after 50,000 more people are killed, or is it going to happen after the entire country is overrun and occupied, in which case maybe it'll be more than that? It's going to happen at some point. We're supposed to be real foreign policy realist people. I agree. I'm not international humanitarianism. Let's just do realism. What's best for us? What's best for Ukraine? Is it worth spending this money, and is it worth dragging out the process of Ukraine's destruction to save a sliver of territory that has a lot of Russian-speaking people and wants to be part of Russia or independent anyway? I don't think it is.
Sure. Well, I would say I would push back a little and say I don't think that what's best for us should control, because the us isn't you and I. It is American imperial project. Mm-hmm. So I think that there are a lot of shared interests with regular citizens around the world, none of whom want there to be all of these endless wars and conflict that are generated by financial institutions like the IMF that are being used as tools by leading governments like ourselves. That aside, I think that the tell here is twofold, to your point. One is that it's an open admission and an acknowledgement, as they've been doing periodically throughout, but it's a very open acknowledgement that this is all about a proxy war and weakening the other nuclear power. The interests of Ukrainians aren't even a second thought in that whole dialogue, that whole monologue that he just set out there. And two, there's an admission that as long as American lives aren't on the line, that the moral ethical implications of engaging in this prolonged conflict don't matter here at home.
Right.
And what's so frustrating is that so many people who have been on our side of this and arguing for the end of this conflict, and that America shouldn't be fueling this conflict artificially to last longer than it would have ordinarily without negotiation, because it's in our best interest to weaken Russia, the state's best interest to weaken Russia. We've been the ones characterized as being inhumane and indifferent to the interests of Ukrainians in our lives. But what you hear there from Mitt Romney is an open admission that as long as the bodies on the ground are Ukrainian bodies and not American bodies, then it's of no cost to us. If you have a different conception of the world where you see ourselves as global citizens that should be aligning against these horrible, corrupt, powerful governments, then you see exactly how callous it is to be told as American citizens that you should not care as long as the people on the ground don't have a passport. And I got to say, that does not sound like a humanitarian mission.
All right, let's circle back to Hungary now. Now, look, I have a lot of esteem for Hungary and the Hungarian people and their contributions to the preservation of Christianity and Catholicism, coming to the aid of the last great Catholic monarch of Europe, Maria Theresa, and helping her keep her claim in the War of the Austrian Succession and rebuff those Prussian invaders and put Protestantism in its place. So mad props to Hungary and what it's done for the church. That said, today, Hungary is not actually, as Tucker concedes in that clip, Hungary's church attendance is lower than most of America and Russia's. Mm-hmm. Their abortion rates are higher than most of America. Mm-hmm. They're poorer places than most of America. Mm-hmm. So, it's funny because a lot of conservatives used to be or thought of, I guess, maybe just during Bush fervor as like the rah-rah patriotic side. You can have enough. Look, you should have respect for Hungary. That's fine. But let's be real about what this is not some. I don't know that it's exactly the Christian or Catholic paradise that some in this NatCon or more weird
it's bizarre,
religious
Robby.
They're all about
it's
Hungary.
just so bizarre. So I have a lot of fond feelings of Hungary. One of my best friends from high school is Hungarian. I was there for her wedding in, I think, 2015. She got married in one of the most famous churches in the country. We had to cover up, and we all were very respectful and all of those things once we were in there. But it certainly wasn't some bastion of deep-seated religious belief that was happening within the walls of that cathedral, at least while us folks were in there. But the bigger point is this. America is overwhelmingly a Christian nation. We have never had a president who wasn't Christian. God bless Bernie for trying, and Marianne Williamson for trying again. But we have a country that is 63% Christian, according to a poll that I just pulled up, and the bulk of the remainder is not some other religion. It's just 23% unaffiliated. So the idea that there's these secret anti-Christian values and beliefs that are dictating American foreign policy, when everybody is either Christian or nothing at all, it strains credulity from my perspective.
Yeah.
All right. Well, a new CNN report alleges that Russian intelligence is operating a systematic program to launder pro-Kremlin propaganda into the United States through private relationships between Russian operatives and unwitting Western targets, according to newly declassified intelligence. In response, the Gray Zone's Max Blumenthal wrote on Twitter, CNN exists to provide us intelligence with a vehicle for laundering its propaganda. Its top hosts enthusiastically manipulate the American public on behalf of their handlers in Langley, Foggy Bottom, and the Pentagon. This is pure projection.
Right. This is, the obsession with the idea that Russian narratives are permeating our awareness. They just say mundane observations of the reality of the current war effort. Correct. Is labeled by NBC to be somehow Putin talking points have made their way into Western discourse. How dare they? It's just if you say the sky is blue, but Vladimir Putin agrees that the sky is blue, you are now contributing to Russian-based disinformation, because the underlying information obviously is true. The sky is blue, but it's Russia agrees with that, so it's disinformation.
It's so scary. This stuff is being framed as so scary that I think I found my next Halloween costume.
Oh, yeah?
It's going to be Russian narratives.
Ooh, spooky. I'm going to be Ken.
We know.
I'm going to be Ken.
We know. All right. More Rising for you right after this.